Welcome to Heart of a Soldier, where we honor the courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable spirit of those who serve. Today's story will take you on an emotional journey of loss, hope, and the extraordinary bond between a wounded warrior and his four-legged guardian angel. This is the story of Sergeant Jake Mitchell and Max, a tale that reminds us that sometimes, in our darkest moments, light comes from the most unexpected places. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Kandahar as Sergeant Jake Mitchell adjusted his helmet and checked his rifle one last time. At 24, he had already completed 2 tours in Afghanistan, but this mission felt different. Something in the air made him uneasy as his squad prepared to move through the marketplace. "Stay sharp, boys," Jake called out to his team. "Intel says there's increased activity in this sector." Private Rodriguez nodded, his young face serious beneath his combat gear. "Roger that, Sarge. We've got your 6. Jake had always been the type of soldier others looked up to. Back home in small-town Nebraska, he'd been the quarterback who led his high school team to state championships. Here in Afghanistan, he was the sergeant who never left a man behind, the one who wrote letters home for soldiers who couldn't find the words, the one who kept morale up even in the darkest moments. The squad moved through the narrow alleyways with practiced precision. Jake's eyes scanned every doorway, every rooftop, every pile of debris that could hide an improvised explosive device. He'd developed an almost supernatural sense for danger over his 3 years of service. "Movement. 2 o'clock," whispered Corporal Thompson into his radio. Jake raised his hand, signaling the squad to halt. The marketplace was unusually quiet for this time of day. No children playing, no vendors calling out their wares. Even the stray dogs that usually wandered the streets were nowhere to be seen. "Something's not right," Jake muttered, his instincts screaming at him to turn back. But orders were orders. They needed to secure this route for the convoy coming through later that afternoon. Jake took a deep breath and stepped forward, his boot touching the pressure plate buried beneath a thin layer of dust and debris. The world exploded in a blinding flash of white light, followed by deafening thunder that seemed to split the earth in half. Jake felt himself lifted off his feet, his body thrown backward like a rag doll. The last thing he remembered was the taste of copper in his mouth and the distant sound of his teammates screaming his name. When Jake finally regained consciousness, the world had changed forever. The first thing he noticed wasn't the pain in his legs or the bandages covering most of his body. It was the complete and total darkness that enveloped him like a suffocating blanket. "Nurse," he called out, panic rising in his throat. "Nurse, I can't see. Why can't I see?" Footsteps hurried toward his bed, and he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Sergeant Mitchell, you're awake. Try to stay calm." "Where am I? Why is it so dark in here? Can someone turn on the lights?" The silence that followed was more terrifying than any explosion. When the doctor finally spoke, his voice was heavy with sympathy that Jake didn't want to hear. "Sergeant, you're at Walter Reed Medical Center in Maryland. You've been unconscious for 6 days. The eyed blast, ... There were severe injuries to your face and head. I'm afraid the damage to your optic nerves is permanent. I'm so sorry." The words hit him harder than a bomb had. Permanent. Blind. Forever. Jake's hands trembled as he reached up to feel the bandages covering his eyes, the reality of his new existence crashing down on him like a collapsing building. "No," he whispered. "No, this can't be happening. I have to see. I have to go back. My men need me." "Jake," the doctor said gently, "your fighting days are over. But your life isn't. We have programs, resources, ways to help you adapt." "Adapt?" Jake's voice cracked. "How do you adapt to being useless? How do you adapt to being a burden?" For weeks, Jake refused visitors. His parents flew in from Nebraska. His sister drove down from New York. His former teammates from his unit called every day. But Jake turned them all away. He lay in his hospital bed, trapped in an ocean of darkness, drowning in self-pity and rage. The nightmares were the worst part. He would dream of the explosion, but in his dreams, he could still see. He would see his teammates' faces, see the beautiful sunrise over the Afghan mountains, see his mother smile. Then he would wake up to darkness, and the loss would hit him all over again like a fresh wound. "I don't want to live like this," he told his counselor during one of their sessions. What's the point? I can't serve. I can't take care of myself. I can't do anything. Have you considered a guide dog? Dr. Sarah Chen asked quietly. Jake turned his head toward her voice, anger flashing across his scarred features. I'm not some helpless invalid who needs a dog to lead me around. It's not about being helpless, Jake. It's about independence. It's about getting your life back. 3 months later, Jake found himself at the Guide Dog Foundation on Long Island, still reluctant but desperate enough to try anything. The trainer, a kind woman named Linda Morrison, had been working with veterans for over 15 years. Jake, I want you to meet someone special, Linda said as they stood in the training facility. His name is Max. Jake heard the soft padding of paws on the floor, then felt something brush against his leg. A wet nose nudged his hand, and despite himself, Jake found his fingers running through thick, soft fur. He's a 2-year-old golden retriever, Linda explained, one of our best graduates. He's been waiting for the right partner. Max sat beside Jake, his warm body pressed against the veteran's leg. There was something calming about the dog's presence, something that quieted the constant storm in Jake's mind. He doesn't know I'm broken, Jake whispered, more to himself than to Linda. You're not broken, Jake. You're wounded. There's a difference. Over the next 4 weeks, Jake and Max learned to work together. At first, Jake resented needing the dog's guidance. He stumbled, fell, cursed, and wanted to quit a dozen times a day. But Max never gave up on him. When Jake fell, Max would gently nuzzle his face until he got back up. When Jake got frustrated and yelled, Max would simply wait patiently until the storm passed. Slowly, Jake began to trust the dog. Max's harness became an extension of Jake's own body, the dog's movements telegraphing obstacles, changes in elevation, and safe paths forward. More importantly, Max became Jake's companion in the darkness, a living reminder that he wasn't alone. You know what I think? Linda said during their final week of training. I think Max has been waiting his whole life for you. Jake knelt down and wrapped his arms around the dog, burying his face in Max's golden fur. For the first time since the explosion, Jake felt something other than despair. He felt hope. Returning to civilian life was harder than any military operation Jake had ever undertaken. His apartment in Arlington, Virginia, had to be completely reorganized. His parents had moved all the furniture against the walls, removed anything he might trip over, and installed grab bars in the bathroom. It felt more like a prison than a home. But Max changed everything. With the dog as his guide, Jake began to venture outside again. They walked to the corner store, navigated the metro system, even went to a baseball game. Max seemed to understand that Jake needed more than physical guidance. He needed emotional support. At night, when the nightmares came, Max would jump onto the bed and curl up next to Jake, his warm presence chasing away the demons of war. During the day, when Jake felt overwhelmed by the simple task of making breakfast, Max would rest his head on Jake's lap, somehow knowing exactly when his human needed comfort. Jake started volunteering at the VA hospital, talking to other wounded veterans. With Max by his side, he felt confident enough to share his story, to help others who were struggling with their own dark journeys. The thing about losing your sight, Jake told a young Marine who had lost his leg, is that you learn to see in different ways. Max here taught me that. Months turned into years, and Jake built a new life. He got a job with a nonprofit that helped place service dogs with veterans. He moved into a bigger apartment, one that he furnished himself with Max's help. He even started dating Sarah, a social worker he'd met at the VA hospital. I never thought I'd be happy again, Jake told Max one evening as they sat on their apartment balcony. The dog's head rested on Jake's lap, and Jake could feel the animal's contentment in the way he breathed, steady and peaceful. But you showed me that happiness doesn't depend on what you can see. It depends on what you can feel, what you can give, what you can love. Max's tail thumped against the floor, as if he understood every word. 7 years passed like pages in a book. Jake and Sarah got married, with Max serving as the ring bearer, his golden coat shining as he walked down the aisle with the rings attached to a special pillow on his back. They bought a house with a big backyard where Max could run and play. Jake's work with veterans flourished. He became a national speaker, traveling the country to tell his story and advocate for service dog programs. Max was always by his side, the perfect partner who never missed a cue, never let Jake down. But time, the great equalizer, began to catch up with Max. At 9 years old, the once energetic golden retriever began to slow down. His steps became more careful, his breathing heavier after their daily walks. Jake could feel the changes in the way Max moved, in the way he hesitated before certain obstacles. "He's getting old, isn't he?" Jake asked the veterinarian during Max's checkup. Dr. Martinez's voice was gentle but honest. "He's developing arthritis in his hips, and his heart isn't as strong as it used to be. He's lived a good life, Jake. He's been a working dog for 7 years, which is longer than most. His retirement is well earned." The word retirement hit Jake like a physical blow. Max wasn't just his guide dog. He was his best friend, his constant companion, his lifeline to the world. "How long?" Jake asked quietly. "Maybe a year. Maybe 2, if we're lucky. We'll keep him comfortable, manage his pain. But Jake, you might want to start thinking about training with a new guide dog." Jake shook his head. "There is no other dog. There's only Max." Max's decline was gradual, but steady. Some days were better than others, but Jake could feel his beloved companion struggling. Max would still work, still guide Jake wherever he needed to go. But Jake began to limit their outings, unwilling to put extra strain on his aging friend. "You don't have to work anymore, boy," Jake told Max one morning as the dog struggled to get up from his bed. "You've done enough, more than enough." But Max wouldn't quit. Every morning, he would bring Jake his harness, ready to face another day of service. It was who he was, what he lived for, and Jake understood that taking that away from Max would be like taking away his purpose. They developed new routines, shorter walks, more rest stops, gentle exercises to keep Max's joints moving. Jake learned to read the subtleties of his companion's condition, knowing when Max was having a good day and when the pain was too much. Sarah helped as much as she could, but she knew that this was something Jake and Max needed to navigate together. "He's not ready to give up yet," she told Jake one evening as they watched Max sleep by the fireplace. "And neither are you." The end came on a crisp October morning. Jake woke up to find Max beside his bed, breathing heavily, his body trembling with pain. The dog tried to stand when Jake called his name, but his legs wouldn't support him. "It's okay, boy," Jake whispered, kneeling beside his friend. "It's okay. You've been such a good dog. The best dog." Dr. Martinez came to the house, understanding that Max deserved to spend his final moments in the place he loved, surrounded by the family he had served so faithfully. "He's not in pain now," the vet assured Jake as he administered the sedative. "He's peaceful." Jake cradled Max's head in his lap, feeling the dog's breathing slow, feeling the life ebb away from his dearest friend. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for giving me my life back. Thank you for showing me that I wasn't broken. Thank you for being my eyes when I couldn't see, and for teaching me to see with my heart." Max's tail gave one last gentle thump, and then he was still. The days after Max's death were the darkest Jake had experienced since losing his sight. The house felt empty without the sound of Max's breathing, the gentle click of his nails on the hardwood floor, the warm presence that had been Jake's constant for 7 years. Jake couldn't bring himself to work, couldn't face the world without his guide and friend. Sarah stayed home from work to be with him, but she knew that Jake needed to process this grief in his own way. "He wouldn't want you to give up," she said gently one morning, as Jake sat in Max's favorite spot by the window. "He spent 7 years teaching you how to live again. Don't let that go to waste." A week after Max's passing, Jake received a call from Linda Morrison at the Guide Dog Foundation. "Jake, I'm so sorry for your loss. Max was special, one of the best guide dogs we ever trained. But I want you to know, his legacy continues. We've trained 12 new dogs using techniques we developed while working with you and Max. 12 veterans are living independent lives because of what you two taught us." Jake felt tears roll down his cheeks. "He was more than a guide dog, Linda. He was my brother, my teacher, my salvation." "I know. And that's exactly why his story needs to continue being told. There are veterans out there right now, sitting in dark rooms, convinced their lives are over. They need to hear Max's story. They need to hear your story." 2 months later, Jake returned to the speaking circuit, but this time his message was different. He talked about love, loss, and the courage to continue living even when your heart is broken. He talked about Max, about the gift of unconditional love, about the bond between human and animal that transcends understanding. Max taught me that being a soldier isn't just about fighting wars. Jake told an audience of veterans in Denver. It's about serving others, even when serving comes at a cost. Max served me faithfully for 7 years, and now I serve his memory by helping others find their own Max, their own second chance at life. After his speech, a young veteran approached Jake. "Sir, I lost my leg in Iraq 2 years ago. I've been afraid to get a service dog because I didn't want to get attached, didn't want to deal with losing another friend." Jake reached out and found the young man's shoulder. "Son, the pain of losing Max was the worst pain I've ever felt, including the day I lost my sight. But I wouldn't trade one single day I had with him to avoid that pain. Love is worth the risk. Life is worth the risk." Max passed away on October 15th, but his spirit lives on in every step Jake takes, in every veteran he helps, in every life that's touched by their incredible story. The golden retriever who started as a guide dog became so much more: a teacher, a healer, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, love can light the way forward. At Heart of a Soldier, we believe that heroism comes in many forms. Sometimes it wears a uniform and carries a rifle. Sometimes it has 4 legs, a golden coat, and a heart full of devotion. Max was a hero not because he was trained to be one, but because he chose to love without condition, to serve without complaint, and to give his entire life in service to his human companion. Jake Mitchell continues his work with veterans today. And yes, he eventually opened his heart to another guide dog, a German shepherd named Hope, who carries forward Max's legacy of service and love, because that's what Max taught him. That love doesn't end with death. It multiplies. It grows. It finds new ways to serve, new lives to touch, new hearts to heal. Thank you for listening to Heart of a Soldier. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear or pain. It's moving forward despite them. It's loving again after loss. It's finding hope in the darkness. Until next time, honor those who serve, cherish those who love us, and never forget that sometimes our greatest teachers come on 4 legs with wagging tails.